Recording. Wow. And we're going to begin the broadcast. So they'll be right now. What they'll see is what's on screen, and they'll see the two of you, Andrea and Mary. Here we go. What'd you say?
Good morning and welcome to the fall business meeting of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. As folks are coming in, we just want to make sure that you know that we see you coming in. We're excited that you are here. Thank you for your presence this morning. We're going to pop on occasionally and make an announcement as we get the meeting up and running, but you are not going to be able to use your microphone or your video. We can't see you, but don't worry if you can't see one another, you're not supposed to. We have this set up as a webinar, and that means that, that the way that we communicate with each other in the meeting is going to be done in a particular way, and we'll explain that as we move on in the morning and as more people come in. Right now, we're just letting people come in to the meeting, welcoming folks. Good morning, welcome, thank you for being here. Don't panic if you can't talk or see one another, it's okay. Thank you for being here.
And as you're coming into the meeting, folks are going to just be checking your registration status, making sure you've got your first and last name as we have you registered. If you have any questions, if you have any tech problems, feel free to reach out to one of our tech stewards. You can find them and identify them. They have tech steward in their name. You can reach out with a private chat to one of our tech stewards, and we'll make sure that you get the help that you need.
Good morning and welcome all as you are coming into the meeting. Thank you for being here. We're glad that you are joining us today. We're so grateful that you're spending your Saturday morning with us. We have some new tech in use this morning, so some of this is going to look a little bit unfamiliar. This is a webinar format instead of a regular meeting. Everyone is muted unless you are a main presenter. And your video is off as well, so we cannot see you or hear you right now. Those of you with iffy internet at home, you may find that you actually have a better connection to this meeting because you don't have your video on, so there's a nice side benefit there. We do have a fabulous tech support team working with us this morning, led by Katie Hatzi-Wilton. And when there are times for questions and discussion in the meeting, Katie or someone from the tech team will unmute you, or invite you to unmute yourself, I should say. We'll talk a little bit more about how to do that in a moment. When the moderator calls for questions or discussion, you will use the Q&A function to indicate that you want to speak. You'll write the word question or write comment for, comment against to indicate the nature of what you want to say. Our standing rules require that we alternate pro and con speakers when it comes time for that moment in the meeting. So we'll need you to indicate which one you are as if you were standing at the pro or con microphone. Our team is currently cross-checking registrations and updating everyone's name on Zoom so that we know who everyone is and we don't have like 10 people signed in as St. Paul's UCC. We need to actually know who you are. So we're diligently working on that. Thank you, Kathy Rainey, Damian Lake, Meredith Jackson for your hard work getting people signed into the meeting and getting names updated. We're so glad that you're here. We do see folks popping into the chat to say good morning. Thank you so much for welcoming one another. We're so glad that you're here. A big thank you to Sonia Van, our council secretary, for her work today as well. Checking everyone in. Sonia will let us know when we have reached a quorum so that we may begin the meeting officially. And making sure that we've got everything all straightened out with voting as well. We want to thank Eden Seminary for hosting us in the Worley Chapel. This morning we are grateful to have access to this beautiful space and this excellent technology. Thank you, Eden.
Yes. Do you want me to ask her to re-register with her own email?
Good morning and welcome. We are so glad that you are signing in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning on this Zoom webinar with the Missouri Mid-South Conference for our fall business meeting. We're grateful for your presence and your participation. If you have tech questions, you can put those in the chat to contact our tech stewards. We have some folks standing by here, working diligently off on the side, making sure that everyone is signed in and where they need to be. Do not worry if you can't use your microphone. If you aren't able to see yourself, everyone's video is off. Everyone's microphone is off. If there is a time when you are called on to speak, we will invite you to unmute yourself. To indicate that you want to speak, we invite you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen in order to ask questions or make a comment during the meeting. Right now, we've got the chat open, and we'll have the chat open through the morning. If you have a tech question, using the chat is how you contact a tech steward in order to get your tech questions answered. Thank you for being here. Right now, we've got our tech folks working diligently to make sure that everybody's signed in and everyone's name is correct. In a few moments, we will begin live streaming to Facebook, and those of you who are visitors will be invited to go watch this meeting on the Facebook page, so that the people who are in the webinar are the voting delegates who have access to the poll, but we don't have people who are not voting delegates who accidentally receive the poll to vote. We don't want people to be confused by who can vote and who can't vote and asking folks not to vote when they have been given a poll on accident. So voting delegates are going to stay here. Non-voting visitors are going to be invited to go to the Facebook page in a few moments when we have that up and running. We will drop that link into the chat. For those of you who are voting, the majority of you will be able to do so simply by using the poll that will pop in front of your screen. Good. If you are in a room with multiple people, we are going to ask you, or if you're calling in on your phone, you're not going to be able to see the pop-up to vote. We are going to ask you to send an email. You can see this on the screen right now. We have an email address set up. It's vote@mmsucc.org. We are going to ask you to put the vote title in the subject line, and then in the body of the email, we need you to give us your name and yes, no, or abstain to indicate how you vote. You can send one email for the multiple people who are in the room, but we need each person's name to signify their vote individually. Again, that is vote@mmsc.mmscucc. No, I'm going to start over. It's vote@mmsucc.org. Still a little early, but we'll get there.
I'd like to address a few questions that I've seen in the chat. The meeting has not yet started. We're just informing people of some information as they come in. If you registered as a delegate, there's nothing more that you need to do to enroll as a delegate, and our tech stewards and folks are checking that in as you come in. So welcome. Glad that you are with us today.
What? It is not. Let me begin to share that.
Okay. I have David Fitzgerald and Wayne Gadd. Those are the two that are not there. I know, they need to take them out though.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. We are still verifying that we've got everybody in and named properly, and we've got our delegates where they need to be. Thank you for your patience and your presence here this morning. We are very grateful that you are spending your Saturday morning here with us, and we will keep things moving in this meeting as much as we are able. We have some new tech in use here, so this is going to look a little bit different and feel a little bit different. Things might look a little unfamiliar. This is a webinar format instead of a regular Zoom call as you might be used to. Everyone is muted, and unless you are a main presenter, you also don't have video on. So we cannot see you or hear you right now. The way to communicate to those of us who are here in the room at Eden is to use the Q&A feature and the chat feature. We ask that you use the chat feature if you have tech questions, if you are encountering some challenge with the technology, and we ask that you use the Q&A feature for questions about content of the meeting, and for indicating that you'd like to speak during the time of discussion and debate when those times are open. When we are in those times, we will call on you in the order that you appear in the Q&A. We have a fantastic tech support team led by Reverend Katie Hotsey-Wilton. And when there are times for questions and discussion, Katie or someone from her team will unmute you when our moderator calls for discussion. Again, you'll use the Q&A function to say comment for or comment against or question to indicate the nature of what it is that you want to say, and then we'll be able to call on you in the proper order. Our team is cross-checking registrations and updating everyone's name on Zoom right now so that we know who you are and we don't have a whole bunch of people named St. Paul's UCC or St. John's UCC or Frieden's UCC. We know who you are and that you are a voting delegate and ready to go. We are streaming live to Facebook right now. So in a few moments, we are going to ask anyone who's a visitor to go to the Facebook Live and watch the meeting from there. Everyone who's remaining in this webinar is going to have access to the voting feature. So we need to make sure that the people who have access to voting are the people who are supposed to be voting delegates. So those of you who are here as visitors to watch the action, we are grateful that you are here. We are grateful that you want to be a part of this meeting, and we're going to ask that you be a part of it watching on Facebook Live so that you don't accidentally get the polls when it comes time to vote. A big thank you to Sonia Van, our council secretary, for her work today, checking everyone in and making sure that the votes are going to be tallied correctly. I want to thank Kathy Rainey and Damian Lake and Meredith Jackson, who are helping Katie with tech and helping Sonia with the roll call to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly.
We also want to thank Eden Seminary for hosting us in the Worley Chapel this morning. We are grateful to have access to this beautiful space and this great technology resource. The webinar format will make voting easier when the time comes. Everyone who is a registered delegate, that's all authorized clergy, plus lay delegates from churches or associations, everyone who's a registered delegate should be called into the webinar Zoom. Visitors who do not have voice or vote are asked to switch to the live stream on Facebook. Everyone on the webinar will see a pop-up when it is time to call for a vote. If you are Zooming in from a cell phone, or if you have 2 or more delegates in the same room, you will have to email your votes from a computer. And we have a special email set up. It is vote@mmsucc.org. Each time we call for a vote, you'll need to send an email with the vote title in the subject line. And then the body of the email, you'll need to give your name and yes, no, or abstain. If there are multiple people in the room, you may send one email for all of them, but each person's name needs to signify their vote individually. Do we have a quorum? We are still working to establish a quorum, but I want to thank you all for being here. And we are going to begin. We have a lot of business before us, but our work is and must always be rooted in discernment through the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And I have asked Reverend Lisa Martin of St. John UCC in St. Charles to open us in prayer.
Let us be in a spirit of prayer. Most holy and gracious God, we know that you are always with us. But we ask that you be especially with us this day as we discern the future of your church. Give us holy wisdom to make your best decisions for us. And help us in all that we do to recognize each other as your beloved children. Let us speak our truth, yes, but let us always remember to speak our truth in love. We give you thanks, O God, for the leaders of this conference who have spent so many long hours preparing for this day. And we are grateful for each person who is here on this Saturday morning. May we all honor each other for our gifts of time and our gifts of talent. Bless this gathering, O God, in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. I'd like to begin with some introductions and an orientation to this meeting format and how to vote. First, I would like to introduce you to the people who are gathered in person in the chapel at Eden Seminary. Please do note that we are all fully vaccinated and wearing masks per recommendations on COVID safety guidelines. The executive committee is here today. That is myself, Reverend Andrea Alsemeyer, Elaine Tebenkamp, Sonia Van, and Mike Mueller cannot be with us today for he is attending to a family emergency, and Reverend Mary Nelson, our transitional conference minister. We have our associate conference minister, Reverend Damian Lake. Reverend Meredith Jackson and Damian and Meredith are on staff and council, respectively, and today are serving as tech stewards to facilitate meeting needs. Reverend Katie Hotsy Wilson is our tech genius and behind the scenes Zoom whiz. Kathy Rainey is the Missouri Mid-South office manager, poll manager, and organizer of details. Bill Borden, our outdoor ministry consultant. Attorney Grant Weens, legal counsel to the transitional conference minister and conference council. And our parliamentarian, Rob Calvin, who is a DOC member, a teacher, and our parliamentarian for the day. Thank you all. Joining us a little later will be our bookkeeper, Cora Willard, via Zoom. And Mike, as I said, is not with us this morning as he is dealing with a family emergency. So please keep his family in your prayers.
Next, I'm Elaine Tebenkamp, and I would like to remind you of the standing rules for the conference, which were last updated in June of 2019. The rules are posted online on the fall meeting page of our website, and we are placing on the screen those rules that are particularly relevant to this meeting and our format today. We recognize that some of these standing rules are suited for in-person gathering and the multiple day CAG meeting, and we trust that reasonable accommodations can be made. For example, this meeting is slated to end at noon, not at 5 p.m. So we find that if we are not finished by noon, we will implement the 5 p.m. business extension procedure. The one exception to our standing rules on the consensus of the Conference Council is that we will not be allowing amendments to the business before us today. This is for two main reasons. First, the business is interdependent and has been carefully crafted in conversation across the various committees involved over many months. So an amendment to one item could necessarily impact the others in adverse ways. Second, all of these items of business have been open for public discussion and feedback through multiple channels and multiple committees for many months before coming to the Conference Council for approval. And all were unanimously approved by Council after the public input was received and incorporated. We have consulted with our attorney, Grant Weens, and on this matter, and he has commended this course of action. For the business meeting today, we are in a webinar format of Zoom. Attendees do not have the ability to turn on your cameras or microphones on your own. The agenda is structured today so that we have a presentation of each motion and a time to ask questions for information about each motion. And then after the presentations are finished, there will be a time for voting, which will include an opportunity for discussion and debate on each item. To request to speak when it is time to do so, simply type question into the Q&A, not the content of what you want to say, but just the word question. And we will recognize speakers one by one, and you will see a pop-up inviting you to unmute when it is your turn to speak. Your microphone will be on, but not your camera. During the discussion portion, you need to write comment for or comment against, so we know who to call on in accordance to our standing rules, which require alternating voices for and against a motion. If you have other questions about how to use the tech, not questions about the substance of the meeting, please use the chat to ask those questions, and a tech steward will help you there. You got that? Q&A is for requesting to speak about meeting content, like standing at the microphone at an in-person Q&A meeting. And chat is for technology and access to questions.
Thank you. I'm sure you're all wondering about voting. As we conduct the business of our meeting today, we will use the polling function of Zoom to vote. This is why only registered delegates are in the Zoom and visitors are watching via Facebook. We will run a test poll in a minute for you to experience what this will be like. When the poll opens, you will see a box appear on your screen. You will have 60 seconds to vote, and then the poll will close. Results will be calculated and shared verbally. If you have any technical issues, please reach out quickly to our tech stewards using the chat feature. Those of you who are calling into Zoom on your phone or who are attending the webinar with multiple people at the same computer, you will not use the polling feature because it won't be able to count your votes correctly. You will need to send an email, one email for each item when you are invited to do so, to vote@mmsucc.org. That's VOTE at mmsucc.org. In the subject line of the email, you'll write the name of the item of business. Then in the body of the email, you'll write the name of each delegate present and how they vote. We're posting this on the screen so you can see. Name of the item of business in the subject line, name of each voting delegate, and how they want to vote in the email. Sonia Van, our conference secretary, will receive those emails and count them on the spot to add them to the polling tally from Zoom. We're going to run 3 practice polls now. Let's run our first poll now. So this should pop up on your screen.
Are you doing that, Sonia?
That's what I'm trying to do.
It's going to take just a moment while Sonia switches over her screen.
Thank you.
But she's working on it right now. Yep. So you can see, those of you who are delegates, you can see on your screen, test poll, pizza. And those of you who are voting via email, vote@mmsucc.org, pizza in the subject line, and then list your names and your responses. Single choice, pepperoni, cheese, veggies, sausage, ham and pineapple, or abstain. And Sonia will tabulate the votes. We're about to end the poll. We are pleased to share that we have a quorum. We're very excited for this news. Thank you again for being here. As the votes come in, Sonia is working very hard to calculate them all. And I'm seeing lots of enthusiasm for the quorum in the chat. Thank you all for your enthusiasm about polity and the work of the church on a Saturday morning.
Do I need to officially call the meeting to order? Yeah. And with the announcement of the quorum, I am officially calling the meeting to order. So far we've only covered informational things about the running of the meeting. So it is now officially called to order.
We're not getting emails right now. Not that many emails. You can try it again. Or we can ask them.
We are still calculating the votes. Just give us a few more seconds. Those of you who are calling in from a phone, those of you who are watching the webinar but with multiple people in the room, make sure that you have sent your email. Again, vote@mmsucc.org. The title of the vote in the subject line, each person's name, and how they vote in the body of the email. We are seeing in the chat some people's emails are getting bounced back, which is why we are double checking to make sure that you got that you typed in the address right, and then we are working on our end to make sure that we've got our tech working. And this is why we do a practice poll. So thank you for your patience. Bouncing back as undeliverable from the postmaster. This is why we do a poll about pizza.
I also received that bounce back. Who set up the email?
Thank you for your patience as we work this out. We are making sure that the email works. The polling feature worked on Zoom, but we are not, we're working to make sure that we've got the email feature working and set up properly. This is going to take just another minute.
She's a minister. Yep. People are asking to be reminded how discussion works in the chat.
So I saw a question asking how discussion works. So how this will work is we will present a piece of business, and then there will be time for questions. These are just clarifying questions. After each piece of business, it is not the time yet for discussion, just clarifications. After we have presented all of the business, we will have a time for voting on all of the business. And before our vote on each item, we will have a time for discussion of that item right before the vote. We will have 20 minutes of discussion and voting for each item when we get to that point. And at that point, if you have a comment for or a comment against, you will put that in the Q&A so that we can make sure we are alternating as our standing rules call for us to do. So when you have a comment, you will put comment for or comment against in the Q&A, and we will call on you, and at that time, Katie will invite you to unmute your microphone, and you'll have a pop-up on your screen that you can click on that allows you to unmute your microphone. So,
So we are in the process of setting up a new email address because the vote at MMSC email is not working properly. We are going to, because we are located at Eden and we have control over Eden's email address, we are going to use an Eden email address instead of the one that we had set up previously that's now not working. So give us just a moment. We're going to put that new email address up on the screen so that we can all see it. In the chat, you will see vote MMSC at eden.edu. Again, that's vote MMSC at eden.edu. We're going to run a second test poll in just a moment. As we're getting that set up, we need just another couple of seconds to make sure that that's up and running properly. We'll also get it up, make a slide to put up on the screen. And we will run a second test poll in just a moment to make sure that that's working properly. Thank you, Ron Serino. We are just trying to get it right so that we can make sure that everyone's vote is counted.
Well, it's not, they're not currently voting, so.
So you can see on the screen our new email address, votemmmsc@eden.edu. And again, we're going to still continue to use the same procedure. Subject line needs the title of the vote. And then the body of the email needs to have your name and your vote. Names and vote.
So we can relaunch when you're ready. Mary.
Do you want to?
Question being asked by Bob Atkinson, with all the difficulties with this new voting procedure, will there be a paper trail of the votes received?
We have had a question about whether or not there's a paper trail with this vote. And the answer to that is yes. That is why we're doing it this way, so that we have a record of the votes and we are able to have a paper trail to follow up. Thank you for asking that question. We are going to relaunch this same poll to make sure that this works, this email address and this polling work. So Sonia is going to launch that poll now. Again, this is the pizza poll. And you will see it pop up on your screen. And if you are voting via computer, you have 60 seconds to answer this poll. You have 60 seconds to send your email to votemmmsc@eden.edu. We have about 30, 35 seconds left on this poll.
Lisa Martin's concerned that people on the phone might not have heard the email address. He wants to know if we can, but if we say it.
Again, the email address is MMSC. No, the email address is votemmmsc@eden.edu. That is votemmmsc@eden.edu.
Thank you for your patience as we're getting things set up here with that new email address. This is Reverend Katie Hatsy-Wilton, and I can confirm that we are seeing votes coming in now via email. I can see Carol Cobb, Carolyn Harding, Jeff Moore, and Joyce Bathke. So know that there's several more. Mary Albert, Carol Rue, John Blasser, Laura Migneron, Janelle Campbell, Tom Lauer, John Middleton, Robert Atson, Linda Neal, Jay Weisner. I apologize if I said your names wrong. We can see those emails coming in, so thank you for voting via email. We're still going to work out and make sure we get all these numbers correct for our voting. Thank you for your patience as we work through this.
We are about to close the poll. Judy Scott, yes, we got your email. Judy Scott, I was wrong. We did not get your email. Please send it again. Ellen, if you clicked submit on the pop-up, that means it came in directly through Zoom, and you did not need to send an email. You are all good. We are in the process of tabulating the votes. Thank you again for your patience. We are working on tabulating the votes and making sure that everything's set up right. We are going to have another test poll after this one that has a different subject. Very exciting. I know you're all on the edge of your seats. Thank you for your patience and your participation and your persistence as we work to make sure that we get the votes tabulated correctly and we get everyone's vote counted. This is very, very important. Thank you.
Judy says, oh, yes. She told me.
Thank you for your suggestion in the chat, Lisa Martin, about turning on an auto reply so that people know that their email vote was received. That was a great suggestion. We have done that. Moving forward for our second and third test votes, you will receive an email verifying that we received your email when you send yours in. We are almost ready to announce the results of the pizza poll. Thank you for your patience. The next one, we are quite certain will be quicker than this, in part because it's a yes/no, not a multiple choice. Loving the hymns that are going into the chat right now. Sonia is double checking her numbers. Sonia is putting up the numbers so that they will appear on the screen, and she will announce them verbally in her microphone.
Our return vote for the first test vote for the pizza that we would prefer, we have 43 total for pepperoni, 12 total for cheese, 34 total for veggie, 38 total for sausage, 19 total for ham and pineapple, 7 have abstained for a total of 143 votes. 153 votes total. And for this poll, that means that pepperoni came in as the lead. We will try it one more time in the next vote as well.
All right, we are going to launch a second test poll now. This poll, I misspoke, it is not a yes/no poll. We have another multiple choice poll. But this one is a quorum poll. We are going to find out who is here. So that is going to pop up on your screens any moment now. Those of you who are sending an email, vote mmsc@eden.edu. Again, that is vote mmsc@eden.edu. We need quorum poll in the subject line, and then the names and votes of each person voting.
Mary, we need to clarify that email votes are not going to show up on the poll that they're going to see, because people think that their email votes are being charged, but they're not showing up in the results. So the veggie voters get paid.
We want to assure you that we are getting the email votes in. It did not pop up on the screen in that last grid that we showed, but we did have them calculated in there, and they will continue to be. They'll show up. We'll have them properly in there on the next one. You have 15 seconds remaining.
Rob, there's something in the chat that might be for you. There's a concern about the lack of amendments that are going to be allowed.
We're closing the poll in 10 seconds.
Grant, there's a question about standing rules.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob's on that one.
The poll is ending.
There are still emails coming in. You might-
This is a friendly reminder for those of you who are voting by email. You are going to need to put the title of the vote in the subject line so that we know which vote your vote is relevant to, which poll your vote is about. Otherwise, your vote will not be counted.
Rob, you might want to send your reply to Katie to everyone, because they're all going to want to know.
We are counting the last of the emails. This takes a little bit longer. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Sonia and Kathy, for your diligence. We have 2 people checking the emails and doing the counting so that we are confident of the numbers.
We do continue to ask if you have questions or you need tech assistance, you can raise your digital hand and one of our tech stewards will jump over to help you. We have Meredith and Damien responding as quickly as they can. I see several hands that just popped up. We'll be sure to get to you.
Delegate, we are checked.
So we are double checking every vote to make sure that we are receiving votes from people who are registered as delegates. This is why you needed to register ahead of time. We have received votes from people who are not registered as delegates, and we are not counting those votes. So we are double checking to make sure that people who are sending in their vote by email are actually registered delegates.
And Mary Albert, I see your question. Just to clarify, if you are here online in the Zoom meeting as an attendee, you can respond to the poll that pops up on your screen, and that is how your vote will be counted. If you do that and also send in an email, only one of those votes will be counted. That is being cross-checked. So we just ask that if you are here on Zoom, and if you are able to see that poll on your screen when it comes up, vote via the poll. If that's not working for you, please use the email. I hope that clarifies for you, Mary. Meredith and Damien, are you able to answer Judy, Erica, and Kevin? You see there are 3 hands up? Okay.
Just want to clarify once again, those of you who have access to the poll, if you are in this webinar on your own screen and you are just voting for you, we need you to use the poll, not send in an email. If you use the poll and send in an email, we can only count one of those votes, but sending in an email slows the process. So it's faster for everyone if you use the poll. So the poll is the preferred method of voting. The email is the accommodation for those who are calling in on the phone or who are calling in with multiple people logged into the single webinar screen. We are still counting votes that are coming in by email, that have come in. It just takes a little more time to scroll through them.
William Ogden wanted to know if his vote was being counted. William, do you see that?
Yeah, we see it.
Yes, thank you.
We see it.
William, I have confirmed that your vote is being counted.
Well, we see your question.
they see my water bottle. Very good news on this water. I asked her to try to log back in. We have her as a delegate, but she's not able to get back in. Very cool.
We are really close to being able to announce the results of this quorum poll. We're just double and triple checking and putting the numbers into the grid to be able to put the grid up on the screen so everyone can see what the results are. We are this close.
Sonia, we could do Mike Roth's emails. Okay, great. He's sharing a device with Erica, so he's emailing us. That's your buddy, Rob.
Okay, we are ready to share the results of the quorum poll. Again, thank you for your patience. We did build in time for this learning curve. We can see that we've got the emails working because we have more votes than we had a moment ago.
Can you hear me? There we go. Again, this is Sonia Van, Secretary of the Church Council. Myself and Kathy Rainey are tabulating the votes. The number of poll votes are the votes that have come through the poll. I want to reiterate that if you are capable of doing the poll vote, that will allow this to go a lot quicker. If you're not capable of doing a poll vote, or if you have multiple people voting for one device, please do not use the poll. Instead, do the email and list out the person or the people that are voting and their specific vote. If you send in an email and it says yes, but we have several different votes other than yay, nay, and abstain, that I cannot count that vote. So it has to be specific to what is actually being asked on the screen. So the results of that last poll, which was our quorum indicator, is that we have a total of 78 authorized ministers, 71 voted through polls, 7 voted through email. We have a total of 76 church delegates, 61 through poll, 15 through email. We have a total of 6 youth delegates, 5 through poll, 1 through email. Total of 6 association delegates, 5 through poll, 1 through email. And we have, as a test here, volunteer tech stewards. We have 2 total for 168 total votes.
Wonderful, thank you. We are now going to get ready to run our third poll. This vote will serve as our consent agenda vote, where we agree to adopt the meeting agenda and standing rules and grant voice without vote to the visitors in the room. This vote will be yes, no, or abstain. So that will launch in just a second. Yep. You should now have that poll on your screen if that is how you are voting. So you'll have 1 minute to vote, and please respond with your emails if you are unable to use the poll.
Reminder, the email address to use when you are voting by email, if you are calling in from phone or if you have multiple people on a device. A reminder, if you are voting by email, if you're calling in on a phone or if you have multiple people on a device, the email address is votemmmsc@eden.org. .edu. Eden.edu. I'm so sorry. I wrote that down wrong. EDU. We'll put it back up on the screen. Votemmmsc@eden.edu. We need the subject line to have the name of the vote. This vote is consent agenda. And then we need the name of each person voting and how they vote.
We did see a request in the chat that we could just lengthen the time to vote to approximately 2 minutes, just to give them time to put all the information in the email.
We can do that. We will extend the email voting time to 3 minutes. You have a total of 3 minutes to get your email in to vote mmsc@eden.edu. The poll on the Zoom webinar, the poll closes in 10 seconds. I see a question from Lauren Cope in the chat. If the vote we're taking is to grant voice without vote to visitors, will they have access to be able to speak? I want to clarify that the visitors are the people that we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. We have our parliamentarian, our attorney, and our outdoor ministry consultant here in the room with us at Eden. We also will have our bookkeeper, Cora Willard, joining us when the time comes for the budget discussion. Those are the people who have been granted voice without vote.
Well, all visitors can
No.
will not vote.
Okay, we are getting closer. Calculating, tabulating the votes that are coming in by email, and double and triple checking to make sure that we are counting the votes of registered delegates and not counting the votes of people who are not registered delegates. We are closing the email vote and have finished tabulating. We're just putting the count up on the screen in just a moment. Lauren Cope, I see your question. Am I right that the vote we are taking now is not actually a test vote, but a real vote? It is both a test and a real vote. This is a vote to grant voice without vote, to accept the agenda of the meeting, and what was the third thing it's doing? Accepting the standing rules. But also we are using this as one more mechanism to make sure that our voting process is working. And then we will have a little bit of time to check in with folks and make sure that we've got their voting ability all squared away. And Sonia is ready to announce the totals.
Okay, so our motion to approve the consent agenda has been approved as follows. 147 poll votes, 15 emailed votes for a total of 162 yes votes, 2 poll votes, 0 emailed votes for a total of no, 2 for no, 7 poll votes and 0 emailed votes for a total of 7 abstains. Total votes cast for the motion to approve the consent agenda, 171 votes.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your willingness to participate in our annual meeting virtually. I ask that you continue to keep an open spirit and offer grace when technical issues may arise, and we will do our best to keep things moving along. I now invite Reverend Mary Nelson to begin her conference minister's report.
Thank you, Andrea. Greetings, Missouri Mid-South. First, I want to begin with a word of thanks. My deep gratitude goes to the staff of the Missouri Mid-South Conference for their hard work this year, enrolling with the changes that naturally happen with a leadership transition in the workplace, and their creativity and adaptability through the course of massive change in the wider culture, as we have all lived through pandemic and cultural and political and economic upheavals, the likes of which have not happened in generations. You have a capable and solid conference staff, and it is their work this year that has made smooth the transitions we have experienced. Damien, Kathy, Cindy, Julie, Nate, Bill, Becky, thank you for all you are doing for the ministry of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. I also want to thank our conference council and especially our executive committee, Reverend Andrea Asselmeyer, Elaine Tebenkamp, Sonia Van, and Mike Mueller, for their leadership and discernment this year. As we've listened and prayed and taken risks to move the conference forward in ways that have not been tried in many years, I believe that they are helping to bring the Missouri Mid-South Conference into a new era of its ministry, because they believe in what the conference can be and must be in the 21st century. I also want to thank the people who are making today's fall meeting possible: Reverend Katie Hotsey-Wilton, our tech genius, Attorney Grant Weens, Parliamentarian Rob Calvin, Damien and Reverend Meredith Jackson for serving as tech stewards, Cora Willard, our bookkeeper, who is resourcing our budget conversation today, and her business partner, Renee Werner, Kathy and Sonia, who are tallying the votes, and Andrea and Elaine, who are moderating the meeting, and all of you who are here on the Zoom call or watching on Facebook Live, all of you who have given time and financial support and feedback on drafts of the business that is before us today, all of you are making the work of the conference happen and using a beautiful Saturday morning to do so. So I want you to know that that gift does not go unnoticed. Thank you. Thanks be to God for all of you. When 2021 began, we knew, none of us knew that this year would unfold as it has. Our outdoor ministries director at Moval resigned for another position. Our conference minister resigned to take on new adventures as well. We hired a transitional conference minister, which is a new idea to many of us. A coronavirus vaccine was made available sooner and faster than we had anticipated. The virus still impacted our churches and our communities and our families, and some of the more than 750,000 deaths that have happened nationwide have been significant people in our lives. Friends, loved ones, co-workers, church members, teachers, neighbors, parents, children. When 2021 began, none of us knew what COVID would do to our supply chain or our housing markets or the value of our work and the buying power of our dollar. When 2021 began, none of us knew that George Floyd's killers would actually go to jail, or that Breonna Taylor's killers would not. When 2021 began, none of us knew that the wave of unanticipated retirements and job market upheaval would become what we now call the Great Resignation. And none of us could imagine how it would impact our churches and our clergy. We have been through huge changes and challenges together.
I myself am going through a change in my life, which impacts my ability to serve on the conference council going forward. My job responsibilities are changing in my work life, and I will be stepping down as conference moderator after this meeting. But I will remain on the conference council to fulfill the obligations of my term as a member, as planned. I am grateful to Elaine Tebenkamp for her willingness to step into this role sooner than she had anticipated. I know you'll serve well, Elaine, with your own skills and your own style in this new era in the life of the conference. It has been an honor to work with and lead the Conference Council for the past year and a half. The Council is not some elusive, far-off group of people, but are members of local churches in each of our associations. I would like to thank them for their thoughtful and diligent work. You have elected a group of spirit-led, dedicated, diverse leaders, and I encourage you to support them. Trust that each and every one of them holds firm the best interests of the conference as a whole in all that they do. And when you do have questions or concerns, talk to them, not about them. And if you or someone you know feels called to serve on the council, please respond to the call for nominations when it comes in the e-courier next year.
As I have come into this conference, new to this culture and these people, Andrea has been a rock and a source of valuable knowledge and guidance to help me step into this role as your transitional conference minister. Thank you for that, Andrea. And Elaine, I look forward to working with you as the moderator as we move into this future together.
Thank you. It'll be an honor.
Those of you who have heard me speak in association meetings and in worship services know that the Book of Ephesians has been my touchstone for ministry these past 6 months. The more I pore over the words of this letter, the more I reflect on what it says to the congregation in first century Turkey and to the United Church of Christ in 21st century Missouri, Arkansas, and Memphis. The more the story of that church and the story of our church speak to one another in my reading. They were a congregation finding a new way of being together, finding what it means to be faithful when their old ways weren't serving them, but their new ways hadn't been fully discerned yet. I think we have been in a similar place this year, maybe the last few years. You know, when Jesus came into a world where an eye for an eye was the ruling order of the day, there were clans and factions and tribes and groups who fought with one another because they'd always been fighting. They punished one another tit for tat for disagreements and hurts that went so far back nobody really understood their origins. Jesus came into a world where the social order was the social order was the social order, and he said, you know, you guys, it doesn't always have to be this way. We can do something different. We can choose another way to be. We can choose another way to be. An eye for an eye doesn't work. And Jesus was the one who said it out loud. He told the truth. He told the truth not to hurt anyone or one-up anyone or gain more followers and likes, but because he knew there was a better way. And when there is a better way, you follow that way. An eye for an eye doesn't work. There is a better way. One of the stories about Missouri Mid-South that I have heard repeated, almost whispered, yet because it's so new and so grief-pricking and so scary, is the story of David Beebe, beloved saint of this conference, standing at the microphone at conference annual gathering in 2019, telling us the story of ourselves, of this conference. When the United Church of Christ was formed, the lines were drawn for us, and this conference was created, and cultures smashed together, and it didn't feel authentic or life-giving or blessing to be put together this way. And Reverend Beebe said, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And you have been punishing one another for it ever since. And it doesn't have to be this way. We can choose another way to be. An eye for an eye doesn't work. There's a better way. It was working on the 2022 budget before the October conference council meeting that really helped me to understand what is happening here. I was so frustrated looking at the spreadsheet because the names of things don't match what they actually are, what they actually do. I suspect this is part of the frustration that some of you express when you speak about a lack of transparency or a failure of communication. Our line item names don't always match what the line item actually is. And I realized that our budget was describing a conference that was, a staff that was, a program that was, a snapshot of how we were, but that is not who we are or who we say we want to be. It was as if we have inherited our grandparents' house and we're living in it, but we've never replaced or even rearranged the furniture to suit our life today. We're living out of suitcases instead of putting our clothes in the drawers. We've left Grandma's chair next to the window where she liked to watch the birds at the feeder, but we need to put a desk in that spot and be able to work from home. And the bird feeder fell down a long time ago and we've never gone out to pick it up and refill it. We're living around the memories in this home instead of making the home our own and making new memories. That is no way for us to live. There is a better way. We have to deal with the hurts of the past. But at the same time, we also have to move forward and begin trying new ways to be with one another, so we don't keep making new hurts in the present. Next year is a reset year. All the business that is before us today is a chance to draw a line in the sand and choose a new way to be. It's a reset, a refresh, a renewal, a professional audit, a new website, a new structure, a new commitment to outdoor ministry, a new shift into the unifying call and core ministries. What we have been doing, taking last year's budget, last year's agenda, and tweaking it a little bit, that approach won't work moving forward. We can't predict next year based on this last year or these last 2 years, because so much has changed. In this way, COVID has created an opportunity for us. We can't just do what we did last year. We don't want to do what we did last year. We need a reset year where we learn how to be, where we ask, who is God calling us to be? We are not hanging on to the past, but moving into the future. We are nearly a quarter of the way through the 21st century. We cannot continue to be a church that is clinging to 20th or even 19th century ways of being. There is a better way. Next year's theme, next year's guiding scripture will be Psalm 126. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Restore our fortunes, Lord, like the watercourses in the Negeb. May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. We need a year of restoration, a year of reset, a year of jubilee. As we discern who we are called to be and who God is calling to lead us into that, let us seize the opportunity to find new ways to be in ministry and in relationship with one another. Let us work together to find a better way. We have sowed our fair share of tears. Let us find our way home with shouts of joy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mary. And with that, we begin presenting our first item of business for the day. So I draw your attention to the bylaws. And we are going to share on our screen the green line version of the bylaws. So I'd like to highlight the key changes from what we presented in the spring, which was the red line document presented in April. So what we have changed since then is a change in the quorum formula that keeps possible voting delegates as they are, but simplifies the quorum formula and brings us more in line with the practices of other conferences. We have also established that the vice chair is assumed to succeed the chair. It clarifies the role of the board chair, and in addition, and adds a finance committee mirroring the personnel committee. We removed the word small as a description of the working groups, and this requires the board of directors to reconsider bylaws at least once every 3 years. To refresh your memory, the key changes in the red line version presented in the spring were the unifying call and core ministries as a basis for the structure of governance. The conference council becomes the board of directors. The size is decreased, and diversity of composition is spelled out, and accountability for diversity is established. It also changed the structure. The board with the executive committee, 4 core ministries, working groups, personnel committee, and it does away with the previous named committee structure. We also shared on the website some question and answers and a transition plan of how we would get from our current bylaws to these bylaws. So I invite you, if you have not already, to look at those. And we will now open for any questions. Again, this is not time for discussion or debate, but this is just if people have any clarifying questions about the content. So does anyone have any questions about these bylaws?
If you'd like to ask a question, we ask that you simply state in the chat that you have a question. You will be identified and you will be allowed to unmute your microphone.
We ask that you use the Q&A and keep.
Sorry about that. I see that Robert Atkins has a question on paragraphs 343 through 371. Robert, you have been permitted to talk. You may unmute your microphone and ask your question.
First of all, it's Bob, preferably, and it's Atkinson,
Sorry about that.
my last name. And the question that I have is why in the paragraphs 343 to 371 that there's been a movement to consolidate power under the conference council and the conference minister. You'll note in those paragraphs that the core ministries are represented by 3 to 4 board members, with the chair being a board member. And then that those core ministries authorize the working groups and they coordinate, provide oversight, and clarify goals. So there's lots of top-down involved in this change, and I wonder why the conference is moving towards that.
Thank you. I would actually disagree with the premise that this puts more of the authority on the board. The idea of the way the core ministries are created is that it puts board members directly in the same group as representatives from each association. And so it actually takes some of that authority and puts it on a broader group, and folks who are directly connected with the leadership of each association just as board members are also members within an association. So it puts multiple board members in the conversation with multiple representatives from throughout the conference. And then they are in connection with the working groups.
Okay, the second half of my question was then those core ministries are actually providing oversight, coordination, and clarifying of goals and authorizing the working groups. And there's not any mention in any of these, whether it be core ministries or working groups, about numbers of people. With that much board representation, there could be a multiplicity of board members versus very few other members. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, so I will name, I don't have this document directly in front of me. I believe that it says 2 or 3 board members and at least 1 representative from each association. It was intentional that we did not name number of people, because when you start doing that, you almost guarantee that you will immediately be operating outside of your bylaws, which is not ideal. But they are structured in such a way that it should not be mostly board members, because they also have to have representation from each association.
Will the working groups be the current covenanted ministries, or there's going to be changes there?
So the working groups will be both current covenanted ministries that wish to continue and new groups. This was intentionally designed so that working groups can either exist in perpetuity or can be a temporary group that is passionate about a specific issue, and it has the backing and the support of a core ministry group. So they may not all have equal representation if they are a short-term group that doesn't have as many people passionate about it in one area over another. But that's why we specifically named the Personnel Committee, the Finance Committee, having representation from each association.
So the Personnel Committee will designate the people coming from the associations, or will the associations provide those members?
The associations will provide those members.
All right, thank you.
We have a question from Donna. It is not about prohibiting, but allowing. Question from Donna. It is not about prohibiting, but allowing. Is there allowance for it? For electronic meetings.
I think the question is whether or not the new bylaws allow for electronic meetings. And when I asked Grant earlier, the idea was that they don't prohibit it, they don't also explicitly say, they don't explicitly allow it. And so why did we choose not to explicitly say that? Donna, let me know if I got your question wrong.
This may be a question for Grant to respond to. You're good.
Sure. Is this on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So from the legal perspective, the key component is whether something is actively prohibited in the bylaws. So because there's no actual prohibition on the idea of a electronic meeting versus in person, it's the choice depending upon the needs of the organization at the time. So there's no need to actively state this is allowed, because it's by default allowed unless it's prohibited.
And Paula Lafferty has a question. Can she speak?
Paula, your microphone has been unmuted. You may speak.
Hey, sorry, that was a misunderstanding. I had a question about a different issue and sorry about that.
Not a problem.
From Kimberly Quorn, there was a question about, in the green line version around line 55, the age of youth delegates being dropped from 25 to 18 and why.
Thank you. So this was done both to reflect the general understanding of the definition of youth. It also more closely reflects what our national setting does. The national setting, a youth delegate is 18 or under. So this just aligns more closely with the general understanding of what a youth delegate is.
Ellen Martin is asking about, is it advantageous to change the language to quote board, etc.? So the reasoning, I think, behind the board
I'm
of
going to
directors.
let Mary respond to this one.
Yes, there are several good reasons to change the language of conference council to board of directors. For a very comprehensive response to this question, you can see the bylaws Q&A, that document that is posted on our fall meeting webpage. But I will go ahead and share a story. Recently, I was in conversation with a retired conference minister who had gone through this same change when they were serving as conference minister. They went through the bylaws change to create their conference council as a board of directors. And they found that the people who were serving on their board took their job more seriously as board members than they did when they were referred to as a council. And the people of the conference took the role of the board more seriously as well. This is really a change that is about solidifying an understanding of the role of that governing board. And the language of board of directors is more commonly used in the parlance of the day. And therefore, culturally, there is much more understanding of the role of the board, both outside and within. Additionally, it's useful to use language that matches what will be on legal documents, on all sorts of documents that might refer to your board of directors needs to blah, blah, blah. Well, we don't have a board of directors, we have a conference council, it's a little different. This helps with that as well, explaining the role of the board to people who are outside the conference who may need to have an understanding as well. Grant, do you have anything you want to add to that? Grant says no.
Judith Scott.
It should be on.
Judith Scott had a question about the conflict of interest section and the word material that was used in that. Does that refer to financial only?
We're looking that up, sorry.
It's page 7.
Page 7.
In the green line. It also hasn't been amended. It's been there since the beginning. It does primarily refer to financial.
Judith, this is not a change. It's language that has been there all along. It does primarily refer to financial interest, but is also broad enough that there could be other kinds of interest or personal gain. So the word material covers all possibilities.
Polly McWilliams asked, my understanding is the folks representing associations will be elected by the same associations.
Or their council. And we will work through that in the transition.
Or their association council?
Yes.
Andrew Mitchell was asking, what will happen to the charter for the Moval Board of Commissioned Managers under this new structure?
So the Moval Covenanted Ministry will be a working group as we start. And as you will see in our Moval plan, we will be creating a Moval subsidiary board. That actually will be the working group. And over time, we will transfer more authority to that group, taking the time to do training and make sure that that group is equipped to do the work thoroughly and well.
Margaret Phillip is asking, what is the financial responsibility of board members in the event of a lawsuit?
I'm going to let Grant take that question.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Make sure I got that
Yes,
right.
what is the financial responsibility of board members in the event of a lawsuit?
Right. So in terms of a lawsuit, it depends a little bit obviously on what the nature of the lawsuit is, but generalized, you've got insurance that covers the actions of the board that are taken under a proper kind of voting procedure and the rest. So to the extent that that's the case, then obviously you've got insurance coverage that protects any individual financial interest of board members. That would be covered by the conference and by the insurance coverage.
We have someone with their hand raised. Do they need to put their question in the Q&A? Just a reminder that you do need to put your questions in the Q&A, please.
Any further questions?
What's happening with Tom? He's
He
got
needs
his
to put
hand
his,
up.
he needs to put his question in the Q&A.
Tom, if you'd like to go ahead and put your question in the Q&A, to be recognized.
All right.
Would you allow Tom to speak?
Yeah,
Yes?
I call on Tom Stas to ask his question.
Tom, you've been given permission to speak. You may unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Why are we, I'm sorry, what is currently needed for a quorum?
So our current quorum is 1/5 of all possible delegates and 1/3 of all churches represented. So a little note about that 1/5 of all possible delegates. The description of who is a delegate is not changing. So each church will still get the number of delegates based on the size of their church, a youth delegate, all authorized ministers will still be delegates, and associations get delegates. Our struggle, we have found, is that the number of possible delegates does not reflect our number of active folks. So for example, a person might be both a church delegate and an association delegate. Or our number of all authorized ministers includes all retired authorized ministers, some of whom are not engaged in local churches. And so currently that number is 144 for today, but that number changes with each meeting and is a very complicated formula that is outdated, to be honest, and does not align with what other expressions of the United Church of Christ are doing or with the current reality of the conference.
Okay, so what will be needed for a quorum? I'm sorry, well, hold on.
It will be 1/3 of all churches being represented in the meeting.
So as the number of UCC churches close, the number of delegates needed will decrease?
But yes,
So future votes require fewer delegates to make influential decisions.
representative of the size of the conference.
Well, church populations are not the same as the number of churches. So odds are a smaller church will close rather than a large church. So the number of people aren't being represented. It's the number of churches being represented.
Correct, but each of those churches still receives the same number of delegates that they would no matter what our formula quorum is.
That is correct.
It's based on the size of their church. So it's incumbent upon churches to elect and send their delegates.
But that does not address the number needed to make quorum.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
It doesn't matter how many members we have in our conference. It matters how many churches we have in our conference.
Correct.
So as the number of churches decrease, the number of delegates needed to make a quorum decreases, regardless of how many people are actually in the conference, regardless of how many delegates are in the conference.
As well it should. Honestly, if we have fewer people in the conference, we can't ask the same number of people to be representing us at our meetings. It is still proportional to the number of churches in the conference. Thank you for your question. I'm going to move us.
I don't think that answers my question.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I sure you are.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. The first is that will the insurance that covers during the event of a lawsuit also cover the subsidiary board that for Moval? I assume this means for Moval that would be formed if the Moval amendment passes, or if the Moval piece passes.
So my understanding is that of the Moval presentation, or at least the proposal, is that it's a subsidiary board still within and underneath the conference. And so until that is a separate entity, it still falls within all of the same protections and understandings and legal obligations and responsibilities of the conference.
Another question, do we currently know under which core ministry the Moval subsidiary board group will be formed?
No, we will be meeting, if you look at the transition plan, we will meet with each of the current active covenanted ministries, and they will have influence on that. So we're not assigning folks to core ministries. We're talking with them about which core ministry they feel and fits most closely with the work that they are called to do.
And just a reminder that it would be very helpful, please put your questions in the Q&A so that we can track them, but there is one in the chat that says, so if we only need 1/3 of the member churches represented to meet quorum, then currently with 140 churches, we would only need 47 delegates to make a quorum.
That is correct.
But it doesn't change the requirements of us to publish meetings and to actively put the word out about the meeting.
It also doesn't change who is a possible delegate. It just changes the number of people that are needed. It may be useful to know that I did a survey of all of the conferences, asking conference ministers what their quorum formula was, and our current formula as it is written is far and away larger than any other conference's quorum. Moving to just calculating 1/3 of our churches is much more in line with what other conferences do. It's typical practice in the United Church of Christ. There are conferences who have quorums that are smaller than that. There are also a couple of conferences who have quorums that are larger, but this is much more in line with kind of an average quorum size.
And someone asked, how long have we not had quorum for?
We have not had a quorum since Conference Annual Gathering 2020. So the last 2 meetings of the conference have not had a quorum.
I also see concern that Tom's question wasn't answered. Tom, if you have more to your question, please do put that in the Q&A.
In the interest of time, we're going to move on to the presentation of the Moval plan. There will be discussion of the bylaws before we vote.
So Sonia Van and I will be presenting the Moval plan just as we did in the town hall meeting that happened 2 weeks ago. And I'm vamping to give Katie a moment to put the PowerPoint up on the screen so that it is visible. There we are. It starts with the timeline, so that's you.
The Moval timeline is a abbreviated timeline of the past history to get us to this point. And so as you reflect on and look at the presentation before you, the PowerPoint, just want to remind everyone that in 2017, 2018, the Conference Council put together a task force to just look at Camp Moval and the overall working and requirements to continue to support Camp Moval. Task Force number 2 met presenting to the Conference Council in April of 2019. This was originally coming forward from the Covenant Ministry in April of 2019. Conversation about Tambo's future initiated the opportunity for us to seek more time and input from neighborhood houses as we talked about the use of Tambo and the history of Tambo, and that was at the fall 2019 conference annual gathering. COVID-19, the pandemic started in March of 2020 as we were still looking at and discussing the sort of outstanding issues arising out of the conference annual gathering of 2019. And so a task force was put together made up of a subcommittee of council members to look at the viability of both Camp Moval and Tambo and the statistics and background financials and so forth of those two properties and the overall Camp Moval ministry. In February of 2021, the council made a recommendation that we would, that if it was up to the council, that we would recommend that Moval be sold. However, because it is more than just the council and the conference, and we understood the emotional attachment to Camp Moval, that it was important that we took the time to discern and to hear from the conference council. And so a period of discernment began at that point, which ended in the summer of 2021 with Brandon Simmons serving as our discernment partner. And in fall of 2021, the council created the redevelopment plan that we will present to you today and that we will vote on today. That redevelopment plan was in conjunction with the Covenant Ministry, those who participated with Moval, with the entire conference and learning and listening sessions, and with several feasibility teams that got together to continually review the information that arose from every one of those points of contact. Eventually, the redevelopment plan was put together based off of both the recommendations of the Covenant Ministry, the feasibility team, the conference council, and the larger, the executive team and the larger conference council. So that's the information that you will see today. Thank you.
Katie, next slide, please. So again, this is how the plan was developed.
So again, just using the information that I've already stated, the task force studies, the ideas generated in the discernment process, recommendations from the outdoor ministry consultant, which is Bill Borden, who is here today with us, the conditions and licensure of the property for occupancy, the ongoing concerns from that piece, staff, programming, mission needs, capacities, all of those things came into reflection as we talked about and came with this plan, as well as experiences of other conferences as they either revitalized and sold their own camp property. So those all came into play. Next slide. So with all of that in mind, all of those pieces, the several dots, large, small, and otherwise, were the many factors that then came into the proposal that we will vote on today. The council will makes recommendations. We review that plan. We've organized that plan. But this is not a council plan. This is a covenant ministry, feasibility, discernment, working group effort that we put this entire plan together with all of us in mind. And so as you review it, I would ask that you would please keep an open mind so you understand that we could not necessarily address all concerns, but to the best of our ability, as we looked at our fiduciary responsibility as council members and the overall needs of Camp Moval, that is the presentation that you see today. Next slide.
So in my work, speaking with other camps, doing research about what makes a camp thrive, in my conversations with Bill and with other camp directors, one of the things that was very obvious is that successful, thriving camps are founded, they're programmatically built, and their site design is built around, and their leadership is built around a unified vision, a unified mission for the ministry of the camp. And so we felt when putting together this plan that it was very important that the mission of the camp be central to the plan and central to all that happens as we work on this redevelopment. So this mission statement here is the beginning of that work. The vision is that Moval can become a spiritually reinvigorated and financially sustainable camp and retreat center that serves the mission and ministry needs of the Missouri Mid-South Conference and its partners. Camp program, staff, and culture will be rooted in the Christian values of community building, anti-racism, LGBTQ+ allyship, inclusion and access, environmental sustainability, and kindness, with an eye toward leadership development and UCC identity. This plan is a 5-year process which uses annual benchmarks to assess progress. Prince Charles spoke this week in Glasgow to a group of leaders about climate change, and he mentioned the importance of not moving the goalposts. And so we want to think of these benchmarks in terms of helping us to understand where the goalposts are. And we need to keep the goalposts the same and know where it is we're reaching and know how to invest to get there. So in this plan, the goalposts are set to give specific attention to the site needs, the program needs, and the leadership needs of camp, and developing each of those over time. Next slide, Katie, please.
As we look at the plan, it is set up so that we are able to develop yearly priorities. Those priorities are set up in regards to the current property that we're currently dealing with. We have a plan that'll get us somewhere, but we have to also deal with those things that are of concern currently so that we can move forward. The remainder of 2020-21 will deal with security issues. We have several outstanding issues that have occurred, and we have already addressed several of them, but we will go ahead and secure the rest of the property to make sure that those are addressed so that we can move in 2022 to make the property safe and to expedite any of the outstanding issues that have been on the back burner but have already been, whether there's materials that have been purchased or there's a couple of things that need to be done, such as replacement of windows or what have you. 2023 will be about accessibility and environment. There are several issues with our lagoon on the Moval property that will need to be addressed and will be begun and addressed during that period of time. The environment, meaning if there's any clearing of items or specific things that need to be done during that period of time to make sure that it's, of course, safe, but also accessible by more people, that will also be addressed. 2024's plan primarily will deal with hospitality, program expansion, and retreat space. That is the point at which we will continue to work upon and grow the plan of Moval as we are financially capable, as we have the resources of people, and as we have more people who are returning to and enjoying the Moval camp property. 2025, the quality of experience and continued program expansion. In other words, we don't want to start or stay where we are. We want this Moval to become bigger and better and be able to attract more people back to Moval. So that'll be the basis of the 2025 plan. 2026, we can begin to dream of new spaces. Things that we have not been able to do in prior years is to dream dreams again. And that is putting all of these pieces into place so that we can use the resources and our hard work, the funds that we have raised in order to support Camp Moval, and to make sure that the entire conference itself is back on track with OCWM and other capital campaigns so that we are able to expand and do the missional work of the entire conference. Next slide.
So we're going to go through these next few slides fairly quickly. I think the important piece to note is that the program development that is going to take place over the next several years, according to this plan, also matches the priorities of the site development that's going to occur, so that they happen in concert and in conversation with one another. We're going to be careful not to bite off more than we can chew to redevelop this program, beginning anew. So we're going to start with 4 weeks of camp. We're going to focus on high school and middle school youth programmatically. This plan was developed before we knew when vaccines would be available to elementary school children, and that was part of the consideration for not focusing on elementary age children to begin with. But also, we know that we have middle school and high school youth who already have been to camp and want to come back. So we wanted to focus on that population first and make sure that we were really able to offer an excellent program for them. We also want to make sure that we have the staff and the volunteers to do the work that needs to be done to make those 4 weeks of camp excellent. We want to make sure that the volunteers receive racial justice training and anti-bullying training. And then we also want to make sure that we have staff and volunteers available who can make fall retreat business with our UCC relationships and partners, who can make that programming excellent as well. Katie, next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the site needs and the program needs develop together. So each year we're going to increase the number of weeks of camp, increase the population that is invited to come to camp, and for whom we are able to guarantee excellent programming. We also are going to expand our volunteer training every year. So the second year will include more specific training for LGBTQ+ needs, needs of neurodiverse kids and adults coming to camp, in addition to the racial justice and anti-bullying training that they will also receive. We're going to increase our attention on retreat business and bringing in more outside retreat groups, as well as having weekend Moval programming. And we'll expand our marketing focus as well. You can see 2024 increases those same offerings to a larger number of weeks and a larger population of children. And it's important to know, as the program develops, each year's development is, at this point, a little bit more vague from here on out, because we're going to have to play it by ear. We're going to need to see what it is we're actually able to do, what the market will bear, and adjust and offer programming in response to the needs that are on the ground. Katie, next slide, please. So again, we're expanding, we're increasing quality, we're expanding offerings, and hoping to be able to expand programming beyond what we currently do to more weekend retreat and other youth and children programming as well, depending on the volunteers and the resources that we have at the time. Next slide, please.
The leadership development for Camp Moval will be reflective of the site development and program development. The clarity of the roles, what does staff do, what do volunteers do, where is accountability for program and budget. At the end of the day, the full responsibility for Camp Moval falls on the council. The year-to-year or the day-to-day functionality falls primarily on the Board of Trustees, the Board of Directors, Conference Council for the Missouri Mid-South Conference, and the staff as they deal with the day-to-day functions. But there will be staff who will be hired to also deal with the operations and to oversee the programming. 2 interim positions will be specific to the day-to-day functionality of operations. One will be a part-time program director. The other one will be a site director. The governance of Moval will be primarily on the council until the subsidiary board is fully developed, and over time, responsibility for Moval will be given to the subsidiary board as we hit the benchmarks that were listed on the plan itself. The aspiration is that campers want to become leaders, and as we develop those leaders, the idea is that more and more of them will want to become a part of the overall leadership of not only the Covenant Ministry Subsidiary Board, but also of the larger conference council, understanding that we're all in this together. Next slide.
So what we have before us is a picture of the current Missouri Mid-South staff structure. And what you can see here is that we have one executive for Moval. Katie, next slide, please. So this proposal offers a plan wherein we, instead of hiring an executive right away, we take advantage of this moment to use those resources a little bit differently. And we hire a full-time site manager and a part-time program director to serve at camp and specialize each position's focus a little bit more. What that also means is that the conference minister, transitional conference minister, would have oversight over those two positions. Katie, hit the forward button so that the animation happens. And then there's another slide. And eventually the intention is that we would someday be able to return to having a position that is an executive director over Moval. And then the transitional conference minister, or the conference minister, would no longer serve in that executive function. Next slide. So each year has benchmarks, as I mentioned earlier, and it's important for us to note there are these 4 annual benchmarks: campership, retreat use, fundraising, and OCWM impact. The idea with OCWM impact is that OCWM should not drop significantly. We are asking churches not to stop supporting OCWM and instead support Moval. We need both. We need fundraising for Moval, and we need the OCWM giving to continue to be roughly in line with the predictions that we have every year. We have a very solid, steady trend line of OCWM giving. It decreases slightly every year. We do hope to change that. But what we need to not have happen is to have a significant decline in OCWM giving. We need to be able to increase the fundraising at Moval and not impact the OCWM picture in the conference overall. So you can see each year we have an increase in campership, we have an increase in retreat use and income, we have an increase in fundraising. We also are going to need to have a capital campaign, and if this plan is adopted, then council will be able to put in the work of planning a campaign, engaging a campaign manager, working to make the campaign happen. But we can't begin the capital campaign until this plan is voted on. Katie, next slide, sorry.
The next steps involve with Conference Council in order for us to get to this point. After today's meeting, dependent upon what your vote is today, we will begin, and this is only, of course, when this vote is approved, this is what will go forward. We will begin planning the capital campaign that will help to continue to allow for the Conference Council to do and support the work of renovating the property of Camp Moval, as well as supporting the day-to-day functionality. We will assist with staff searches, nominate and work with the initial Moval subsidiary board in order to get them established and to put together the areas of responsibility. Immediate need will be to have RVs or mobile homes to house our staff that are on site. And so as a part of this, we're also asking for those, if they have the ability to either donate and or to provide funding to support that those homes, that those be provided so that we can go ahead and hire staff to be on property to support the plans that are currently in place. Next slide.
That's the last slide.
That's the last one. I see that we have several questions that are in our Q&A, and again, we will support those Q&A questions, and we're asking that you please use the question and answer for those. The first question that I'm seeing is from Randy Hickman. Will the timeline requirements be postponed or voided in the event of natural disasters such as pandemic, tornado, or fire? Yes. We are not going to hold the plans of Moval accountable to natural disaster. I'm sure if there is something like that that does occur, all of us will be affected, and we will need to answer and respond to those accordingly. Carol Balfany, can you please speak to the flexibility of the matrix? For example, 2022 targets include 250 campers attend. What if 100 campers participate in the summer program, but 300 show up through other groups? Are we being flexible in what success looks like in the future? The benchmarks in the matrix are put in place not as a solid, you must hit these, or we're turning back the clock, or we're going to change plans. They're put there so that we have a goal in mind, so that we know what we need in order to sustain the day-to-day functionality of Camp Moval. If we don't have 250 campers on a regular basis, or we're not able to support that growth in campers, then we cannot support the growth in the movement and the build up to Camp Moval that we need in order for it to be a viable part of the total conference. So those are put there so that we have a benchmark and a goal that also speaks to what we need in order to support the programming, the site manager, and so forth. So they're not set in stone. If we miss the mark slightly, we'll evaluate the situation and we'll move forward to see what we need to do to make it happen. Eric Roth, what happens to Moval if this plan is voted down? The decision about Moval will go back to the conference council for a decision at that time. And so I can't answer to what will happen at that point, but that's what will occur. The conference council will have to make a decision on the sale of Moval at that point, because that means that we have decided that the hard work of all the people who have been a part of this discernment process, the feasibility teams, the covenant ministry, and everybody who has worked so diligently to put this plan in place has been voted down. And so therefore you're saying that you want the conference council to make that decision at that point, because everything else has happened in order to make this a decision of the entire conference. Andrew Mitchell, what will happen with Moval if, okay, sorry, I've already answered that one. Ellen Martin. If the first benchmark is focusing on safety, what has been unsafe up to this year? And have there been expectations for staff and volunteers up to now? Is it only now that they will have goals and expectations? As a part of employment, there's also always responsibilities in the evaluations and the outcomes and so forth for any employee. Those have always been in place. What we're saying is that we have new goals, we have new benchmarks, we have new responsibilities as we put this plan in place. So there has to be some expectations, yes, for staff, for programming director to be able to address those, and that would be built into their job description. In regards to safety, yes, there are several safety concerns with Camp Moval. And I'm really happy that we have not had any major issues up until this point. That's only by the grace of God that has occurred. There are several issues present. One of which is this. Camp Moval is over 50 years old. Both of the lagoons on both the Tambo side as well as on the Moval side have never been properly maintained for all of the wonderful joy that we have had at Camp Moval. If you could only imagine if you have never cleaned out your septic tank, if you've never flushed your toilet, if you've never done any of those things, and this is the truth of the matter, it's gross, it's not healthy. And we have not been able to function because the state and the county have said that it's unsafe for environmental issues for us to operate. So yes, there have been some concerns in regards to that. Questions from Sherry Stolze. Have you thought about hiring a development director for Moval? If there is a development director that is hired, it will be hired for the entire conference. Moval is a ministry of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. We will always have a desire to make sure that all of our ministries are successful, but we cannot afford to think about Camp Moval over and beyond the needs of the conference council. They are in line with and a part of our overall ministry to serve all the churches of the conference. So our director of development would be a part of the larger picture for all conference ministry. I'm going to give myself a rest here, Mary.
I can't see what's in the Q&A, so I need you to read
I'll
the
read
questions.
them for you and we'll go from
Thank
there.
you.
Andrew Mitchell, in the past we have seen conference council give Moval less time than it needed in order to grow, which has had a negative impact on the camp. What provisions and requirements of the council's time are being put in place to ensure that the camp gets the appropriate amount of time and attention from leadership?
Andrew, thank you for that question. I'm not sure that I'm able to speak to time that has been spent in the past because I've not been here in the past. But part of the provision of creating a subsidiary board that is in direct communication with the conference council is that over time, conference council will be able to transfer greater responsibility to that subsidiary board. This means that, again, over time, the subsidiary board will have greater responsibility and council will be able to focus on other things. For the last several years, it's my understanding that council has not had the bandwidth to do much other than Moval concerns, and that has been part of what's created the need for this plan to be developed.
Sonia, do you want me to read questions?
That'd be great, thank you.
All right, some more questions that we have from Robert Atkinson. When has Moval ever hosted 250 or more junior and senior high students in 1 year? It appears to be an inordinate requirement.
We actually looked into the numbers of registration for 2019. Bill, do you know those numbers off the top of your head? We had a significant percentage of the population was middle school and high school, and a small number attending that summer was elementary. Do you remember the proportions off the top of your head?
So number-wise, in 2019, which was the lowest year in 5 years of running. So we had 375 people participate. 65 of them were adults that were volunteers. So we had 310 participants, and of those participants, well over half were middle and senior high. 250 is a challenge, but we need to move there. I mean, if this ministry is going to be viable and a primary ministry of the conference, we need to be hitting those benchmarks.
Thank you. I would like to add to that response that as we were preparing this document, a vaccine for children younger than 12 was not even available until 3 days ago. So we did not want to put any requirements in this document that would not be safe for us to try to achieve. So the document doesn't say that we can't have camp for younger folks. We have not ironed out the program for next year, but we did not want to include any requirements that then could not be done.
That's an excellent point. As I said in the town hall a couple weeks ago, it would be really, really awful if we promised a whole bunch of 8-year-olds that they could come to camp next year, and then the vaccine wasn't available and we had to tell a bunch of 8-year-olds, sorry, we can't have camp. So we wanted to start with the plan with the population that we knew we would be able to serve, and if we are able to expand, that will be great. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't want children to be able to come to camp. But we want to make sure that we are able to offer an excellent program and that we're able to offer a safe program. And when this plan was written, the vaccine was not available to children.
Katie Zimmer asks, does the council currently have the right to sell the property, or is that right given in this proposal?
Conference Council, as a part of our overall bylaws, says that outside of the work of the annual gatherings, that Conference Council has the fiduciary responsibility to act on part of the entire conference. yet. The decision to sell property is a move by the entire conference to do so. So the current situation is such that this vote, a no vote, does give the conference council the opportunity to make that decision. That's because we have not
Yes
approved
vote.
any other.
A yes vote. You said a no vote.
If there is a no vote to this proposal today, that means that you have decided to not hold up this proposal and to go forward with it, then you have then put the responsibility of making that decision on the conference council. So yes, to answer your question, we do have the right to do so.
The next question is, would it be possible to add a designated contribution to Camp Moval along with OCWM on the contribution form? My congregation would be interested in this contribution in addition to any capital campaign.
That is already possible to do. If you go to our website, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but if you go to our website and you click on the donate button, there is an option to contribute directly to Moval.
And they are both listed on the current.
And they are both listed currently on the website,
On the remittance form.
on the remittance form.
That they said, yes.
And another question, oh, sorry, I should be saying names, from Andrew Mitchell, is that the Board of Commission Managers was always supposed to have a direct connection to council, but this did not always happen. How are we changing to prevent the situation from happening again?
So previously, the Board of Commissioned Managers, as they were stated, was a part of the covenant ministry team that worked under our previous bylaws. Should you approve the bylaws, should you approve this proposal, what you are doing is putting in place core ministry groups that then have subsidiary groups that work. The subsidiary board of Moval will be made up of council members and people from the larger connection of member churches who work in conjunction to oversee the day-to-day functions of Moval as the conference council releases those over time. So that is the difference. It's written as a part of the proposal. It's a part of the core ministry. So you have two documents that support the work of that subsidiary board.
There's also a question from Lindsay Travis. Is 250 of middle and high school over 4 weeks in the first year even reasonable? I think that was answered earlier when Bill spoke. Kimberly Quorn asked, is there going to be a vaccine requirement for participation in the camp program this summer?
Yes.
And Kim Brinkman asked, will Moval focus on non-UCC groups using the site as well?
As a part of the proposal, there is a requirement that the largest majority of users of Camp Moval be of the Missouri Mid-South Conference and UCC entities. Outside of that number, we are opening it up to more and more people outside of that, but that we do the work to make sure that we are supporting our camp. That's a part of this plan, that there have been a small percentage of churches, a small percentage of people who are members of the conference who have supported Camp Moval. If this is truly our camp, our collective responsibility, then we will utilize that and make sure that more of us are aware of the beauty of the outdoors and the ministry that exists at Camp Moval. So a part of the plan is that a percentage of the people be largely UCC, Missouri Mid-South Conference users.
The intention, I'll just add to that, the intention that's written in the plan is that approximately 80% of the business at Moval, both in terms of children attending over the summer and also retreat business in general, 80% would be from within the UCC family, and 20% of users would be from outside. That's, again, the intention over time.
Tracy Harris asks, now that elementary children have an option to become vaccinated, can we consider reintegration, as I do not want the age of middle school and high school out with no elementary experienced camp, even as families get ready to attend? I think we're talking about getting kids into camp younger so that when they hit high school, they are, I think.
So we've already addressed this, but I think it's important that we address this again because it keeps coming up. The vaccination for children under the age of 12 is very new. And as parents vaccinate their children, then they will become eligible to come and be a part of Camp Moval. This decision and all decisions that we make are all about the safety of our children, the safety of the people who utilize our property, and that will always be the underlying current that oversees how and who and when people are a part of it. So please let that be the overarching issue that we direct our attention to, that we make those decisions. The benchmark says one thing, we understand that because that's what the reality was in the time in which we developed the plan. The realities are forever changing quickly with this pandemic, and we will accommodate those as those arise.
And Katie Zimmer asked, in this process, will the conference council be the ones hiring the site manager and the program manager? Will Borden be a part of this hiring process since he is an expert in the field?
Hiring and firing decisions are made by your conference minister and by the personnel committee, and that will continue to be the process. The personnel committee has the option of including other voices in that process. For any hiring process, that's up to them in conversation with the conference minister.
And friends, in the interest of time, I'm going to move us forward.
Those are all the questions in the Q&A.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that was all the questions. We will have additional discussion time before the vote. For our budget, I know the agenda says that Mike will be presenting this, but he cannot be here today. So I invite you to pull up your budget. I want to highlight a few things within it. We are aware that we are presenting you a deficit budget. We would not recommend this be a regular thing that folks do, but we are also aware that we have some deferred maintenance and that we would like to catch up with those things. And so there are several one-time big ticket items: an audit, a website, capital expenses at Moval and Shannondale. The Moval capital items will be moved to a capital campaign if the Moval plan is passed. There's a new layout also. We've condensed the line items and it is compatible with the new accounting system. There are 3 major funds in the columns, as you can see, for operations. I want to lift up that the things that are highlighted in gray show pass-through accounts. They do not list an income budget or expense, but simply what comes in is what goes out. In this budget, the staff received a 5% cost of living adjustment. They did not receive an increase in 2020, and we are aware that this is still not as high as the federal recommendation, but it is what we felt we could implement in this budget. Do you want to add anything?
I think those were the highlights.
Awesome. We will open now to questions about the budget. Again, this is not time for debate. This is just time for clarifying questions.
Are there any questions coming into the Q&A? Okay. We also do want to mention that there is a 4th item of business that is also a financial proposal. That is the Osage head rights proposal. This was discussed a little bit at the August CAG, but not voted. The April CAG meeting, but not voted on. And the business was added to our website earlier this week, maybe late last week. For a number of years, we have been receiving income from a bequest that was given to us that is the ownership of head rights to drill on Osage land. And we have not used the money. We do not want to receive this money. This is money that comes from the exploitation of the native peoples and the exploitation of the earth, and we don't really want it. So we have looked into how to give back the head rights or how to give up the head rights, and there is no really reasonable, viable way to do that. So instead, what we are proposing is that we will, with this vote today, enable the conference to return the money to the Osage Foundation, and we will give everything that has accrued so far up to this point, and then on an annual basis from here on out. we will make a donation to the Osage Foundation that is the money that we have taken in from those head rights. So if there are questions about that, we're also.
Now about the budget.
Okay, questions about the budget.
I think folks had some time to come up with questions about the budget. So Cindy Baum asks, since this is a budget with a considerable deficit, if all expenses are made as planned, how will the deficit income be made up? Is there a plan for use of reserve funds?
Could you repeat the beginning of that question again? I'm sorry.
The question is about the deficit, and
Okay.
would we use reserve funds to cover that?
Yes. In short, yes, we have reserve. We are able to cover the deficit. Also, you can always donate more, and that would be welcome as well. The deficit can be addressed with existing cash and possible reserve funds. Both are options.
And
I
Nate-
also will just lift up, that we intentionally estimated high on expenses and low on income so hopefully we would not have that large of a deficit, but we wanted to be conservative in our estimates of what things would cost and how much we would receive.
And Nate Folk asked if Shannondale's recent timber sale is on the budget.
The income from Shannondale's recent timber sale has been inputted into our system, and what's shown in this budget that we've got online is the snapshot of the first half of this year. The income from the Shannondale timber sale came in the second half of the year, so that's not shown here, but it is in our budget, yes.
Ron Hill says that almost $106,000 is labeled as miscellaneous income. That seems like a lot of money, basically unaccounted for, from whom, etc. So what is that line?
That is an excellent question, thank you. So last year, in 2020, we received 2 PPP loans. Those loans are listed on our books as liabilities. The $106,000 miscellaneous income is how we have signified that first PPP loan has been forgiven. We have to account for that somewhere. And because it was listed as a liability in one part of the budget, it then is listed as income in another part once it is forgiven. So that first PPP loan has been forgiven. The second PPP loan, we are in the process of asking for that to be forgiven as well. We anticipate that it will be. But the reason it shows that the thing shows up as income this year is because it was given, the forgiveness was given this year, but the loan was received last year. So the loan is on last year's books, and the income is on this year's books. That's why it looks like such a large amount.
Bob Atkinson asked, why is OCWM basic support only at $90,000? Bob, if you have a line number for that, that would probably be helpful.
That is not a correct
So it should be
reading.
at 590,000, I believe.
590,000 is the total.
If you add across, so we
Read across.
broke it out this year. So you see the portion that goes to the conference budget, the portion that goes to the Moval budget, the portion that goes to the Shannondale budget, and then you should see the total to the far right.
That's 590,000 is the total. Are there other
Those
questions
are all
in the
the
Q&A?
questions.
I see a question in the comment. It says, why are we only showing 6 months budget? We are showing 6 months of actual because, to be honest, that's how long it takes to make this budget. We've been working on this since July. And so for the things that we know are pretty consistent, we for a year's projection, doubled the first 6 months. But that is you're seeing 6 months of actual. The budget is for the full year of 2022.
Are there other questions?
From Dana McNamara, how come our youth funds are zero for the next year when we will have camp?
So if you read across, the budget has a column that is for Moval expenses. Youth ministry is actually not a Moval expense per se. It spreads across, but the Moval expenses are in a column up and down, not just one line item across.
There was a request from OCWM to make a presentation. Rick Oberly is wondering if he could ask churches to give more to OCWM. I don't know if that's in this part of the agenda.
We can always ask churches to give more to OCWM.
The chair recognizes Rick Oberly. Can we let Rick speak?
One moment. Rick, your microphone has been unmuted. You may speak.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I'm on the OCWM Covenant Ministry team, or whatever it will be, under the new bylaws. But I just wanted to point out that so many of the situations that we have and the challenges that we have in our conference are due to the declining support of our churches supporting OCWM. And I know people say, well, we've lost 50 churches or so in the past 20 years. But the decline in OCWM remittance does not correspond with the decline in churches. We are giving far less than we should be in OCWM to support the ministries of the conference. So I'm the pastor at Columbia United Church of Christ, who, those of you who don't know me, our church is increasing its OCWM support for 2022 by, it's 7%. We're going from 14,000 to 15,000. We were going to do 5%, but it was an even number to go to 15,000. So we're doing 7%. I would like to challenge all of these folks who have concerns about Moval and about bylaws and about representation at the conference annual gathering and so on, which I have concerns as well. I would like to challenge all of you to also go back to your churches and increase OCWM by 5% for 2022. There's no reason why we should not be bringing in at least $600,000 a year, and we should be bringing in far more than that in OCWM. And I know there's a lot of baggage as to why that's happened over the years, but we have a covenantal relationship with not only the conference leadership, but with every one of the other churches in this conference. And I think part of living into that is faithful support of OCWM. So I'm challenging all of you who are listening to this to go back to your churches and raise your OCWM for 2022 by at least 5%, or whatever works for you. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Rick.
Someone
Amen.
asked how much OCWM goes to national.
20% of OCWM income goes back out the door to national. 7.8% goes to Moval, 5.9% goes to Shenandoah. Those allocations have not changed and are not anticipated to change.
And someone asked if all staff are getting a 5% raise. I think there was a
Yes.
5% cost
Yes.
of living adjustment.
Yes, a 5% cost of living adjustment to the staff across the board.
Those are all the questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you. We have now come to the time of voting, which includes the final debate on each item of business. We have allotted up to 20 minutes for discussion of the bylaws and Moval proposals, and up to 10 minutes each for discussion of the budget and Osage head rights. Each of these items of business come from the Conference Council and do not require a second. The bylaws proposal requires a 2/3 majority to pass. All other items require a simple majority to pass. A reminder, if you wish to make a comment for or against a motion, please write the word comment in the Q&A and indicate if you wish to speak for or against the motion. That way we know to turn on your microphone and call on you. Your video will remain off. Each speaker has 2 minutes to speak, and then their microphones will be turned off. When we have come to the end of the time allotted, or have no more people indicating that they want to speak, we will end debate and vote. We begin with discussion of the proposed bylaws. I invite you to indicate in the Q&A if you wish to make a comment for or against, and we will make it so you can turn on your microphone when we call on you. We will alternate comments from those who are for and those who are against until we have exhausted the list. Each speaker has 2 minutes to speak. So let us begin.
Again, we ask that you indicate in the Q&A if you would like to speak for or against. We're seeing no questions or comments. Does that mean that we are ready for a vote? We'll give it another, okay.
There is
we've got
something in the
somebody.
Q&A.
All right, wanted to make sure that we had time for folks to write that in.
Bob Atkinson asked, has the motion been moved and seconded?
It comes to us from the conference council, so it does not need to be seconded.
I see someone in the chat said they have a comment. Again, if you can put in Q&A down at the bottom of your screen, and you need to say whether you are a proponent for or an opponent against, so that if you can give us an idea so we can appropriately go through the list. We have a proponent comment from Anne Picard.
The moderator calls on Anne Picard.
Anne, your mic has been unmuted. Please unmute yourself and you may speak.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to thank everybody that is participating this morning. And also, I thank everybody that has put together this proposal for Moval. I think it's very important. My son, Nico Pico, is on currently, is a delegate that's currently on a youth delegate. And he's currently on the call right now on his phone.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we muted you. We're currently talking about the bylaws, but we will call on you first when we get to the Moval proposal. And we are eager to hear what you have to say. But we do want to hear it. We just don't want it to get confusing. So
All right.
thank you.
Andrew Mitchell, is this a proponent comment for the bylaws?
I call on Andrew Mitchell.
Andrew, your microphone has been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say that I think I recognize, after being in both the last meeting where these bylaws were seen as the red line version and this one with the green line version, it represents a lot of growth and understanding on the part of the conference towards the needs of the conference and its members. That said, I still don't believe that it is perfect, but I hope that anyone who shares that view will bring amendments to our next meeting. And I think that passing these bylaws as they are will help us to move forward and make more progress as a conference, and that will overcome any of the issues. I don't see any glaring oversights that I might have been more concerned about in the past. And while the Bob Atkinson's comments towards a more top-down structure might be slightly concerning, I think that it is still similar enough to our current structure, but while being more organized to spread out the load and allow work both continuous and more short-term to get done. And I am looking forward to that. I yield.
Thank you.
Paul, we see your comment, but that is in regards to the budget, and right now we are on the bylaws.
Any further comments on or discussion of the bylaws? All right, we are ready for a vote. As a reminder, this vote on the bylaws requires a 2/3 majority in order to pass. Do we have the poll ready? We do. Those of you voting via email, please put bylaws in the subject line of your email. Voting begins now.
And again, the email address for sending your vote by email is votemmmsc@eden.edu. That's votemmmsc@eden.edu.
Thank you for everyone for voting. We are seeing that emails are coming in, and we do see that the polls are being answered through the webinar format.
We have another 20 seconds to do the poll and another minute and 20 seconds to send in your email. Five seconds.
Voting through the poll has ended. Voting through the poll has ended. We are still calculating and collecting votes by email.
Thirty seconds left to receive emails. Emails are coming in and are being tabulated now.
It's a little chilly. It is cold. More blood flow. Okay.
Okay, we are just verifying totals right now.
What needs is an open cup. You can just hold it while it's hot.
Just need a fire in the middle of the room.
Katie, keep the camera away from us.
She knows. Look at that. Look at that positioning.
Yeah. I'll just say it's American. I might request it, but you're not on video.
We are almost there. We are just getting the votes input into the grid to put on the screen.
That's freaking not how this works.
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me, I don't know if you know this, if more than half of you still did this, but like, we were so, we couldn't create a line traces that we just what percentage that, like, we weren't allowed to call them pro and con. And I was like, this is so stupid. And at one point they wanted to change them to like purple and yellow. Heaven forbid. We just had pro and con.
We are almost ready to announce the results of this vote. Thank you so much for your patience with us.
But I have a wall in the church basement. So if you put fabric, then when the ceiling tiles fall, they get caught by the fabric. It's very meditative. Those are really ugly tiles from the beautiful chapel.
The totals have been received, and I'll report as such. 145 yeses through poll vote, 118 through emailed votes, for a total of 163 yes, 10 through poll, 0 through email, for a total of 10 no votes. We have been updated that abstentions cannot count as a part of the 2/3 votes. However, we did receive 4 through poll vote for a total of 177 votes cast. Yeas have it.
Thank you. The motion has passed. Next, we move to discussion of the redevelopment of Moval. I invite you to indicate again in the Q&A section if you wish to make a comment for or against, and we will call on you as we see those come in, alternating between those for and those against. We have allotted 20 minutes for discussion and voting.
We already have 3 folks for, 1 question, and a neutral comment.
I'm going to start with Anne Picard because I said that I would call on her first, so let's start with her and then go on to the rest.
Anne, you've been given access to unmute your microphone. You may speak.
Thank you, and apologize again for my misunderstanding from before. But again, just wanted to just briefly say that appreciate the work that the discernment committee has done for the Moval plan, and I think any capacity that allows Moval to continue is much appreciated. It's been a huge blessing to my family, and I know the kids have definitely missed it over the last couple of years. So really looking forward to being able to, hopefully get them back. Both are in high school, so we'll be benefiting from that. So thank you.
Not seeing any against, would you like the next?
Could
4?
I have the one that's neutral?
Andrew Mitchell has neutral comments.
Andrew Mitchell, I call on you.
Andrew, your microphone has been unmuted. You may speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I have neutral comments because while I support all the work that has been done by the discernment group, I also feel that I'm being strong-armed into either picking an imperfect solution or having no say at all as the conference council takes over the decision. With the bylaws, I stated that I was in favor of them because they could be amended later on. With this piece of business, however, there are no possible amendments after we vote, which is why I feel very strongly that being able to adjust, even as the council has recognized that this information is out of date and imperfect, being able to make changes appropriate to that in this space at this time to move to the perfection and final passage as it's declared, I believe is very important. So I am in favor of the Moval redevelopment plan, but not as it stands. I'm also not in favor of trashing it entirely. And so I'm conflicted on this, and I will be coming with a motion shortly, which I urge you to listen to. But in short, Moval is very important and special, and this plan will do many things that are needed to improve the space and needed to improve the camp and help it to serve as many people as possible. I hope that a plan passes and that all of the discernment is taken into consideration. But as someone who went to nearly all of the discernment meetings, I've had no direct hand in this proposal. I do not feel that all of the considerations have been taken into account, and I don't feel that this space is being open to hearing those anymore. We have been told that we had our time and our space, and going forward, I hope that we are still listened to and that it is not virtue signaling on part of the conference. I yield.
Do we have any comments opposed?
No.
Who is our next?
We have Katie Zimmer next.
I call on Katie Zimmer.
Katie, your microphone has been unmuted. You may speak.
Thank you. I am very much pro Moval. I believe in the work it does. I have been a part of Moval since before this plan was started. I grew up at Moval. I worked at Moval. Part of my professional career is outdoor education. I'm well aware of what the industry is doing. I do not, though, believe that this plan should be contingent on OCWM. I think that is an unrealistic expectation when churches are closing and OCWM is going down anyway. I also do not believe an 80-20 breakdown on usage is right. I do not welcome only an 80-20 breakdown into my church and do not think that that is the breakdown that we should be looking at. I also very much disagree that a no vote means that we want to sell. I don't think that is the intention of anyone that would want to vote no or has considered voting no. I do respect Moval. I do respect all the work that has been put into it. A lot of you have put in a ton of work and a huge proposal has been done, but I think that we need to seriously look at, if we pass this, how we're going to handle this. Because some of those things seem very not what someone of the UCC would expect of other places.
30
I
seconds.
yield.
Would you like another proponent? We have Bill Brinkhorst with comment
I'll
and
take-
support.
I call on Bill Brinkhorst.
2 minutes.
1 moment. I do not see Bill. William, thank you.
Brinkhorst, yeah. You have 2 minutes, Bill.
Bill, you've been unmuted. Please unmute yourself and you may speak.
Am I speaking at this point?
Yes, you are. We can
Thank
hear you. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to state up front that I believe that the motion should be passed.
And shut up.
I'm sorry?
I don't know who's speaking.
Okay, I believe that the motion should be passed. I have been on the Moval covenanted ministry for at least 10 years. And I have a history with the relationship between Moval and the council, and it is old history. And I think we need to think about it as being old history. I could go back and I could talk about all the hassles that were between those two groups, and it's time to go past that. Second, I would like to not talk about the comment about whether or not we're going to sell Moval. I'm going to talk about what happens if we vote no on this motion. I have 30 seconds. If we vote no on this motion, even if the camp is not sold, there is no way the camp will open in the summer. It can't, the council can't get it put together that way. That means 3 years the camp will not be open. It's going to be really hard to resurrect Moval after 3 summers of not working. I think this is the best that we have available, and I have 4 seconds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone waiting to speak against?
There's not. There is a motion from Andrew Mitchell and a point of clarification from Cindy Bum.
Let's start with the point of clarification.
So she said, point of clarification, these last 2 comments are not either neutral or in favor of the proposal. They are opposing comments. So.
Thank you.
And
We are not accepting any new business at this meeting. So Andrew's motion is out of order.
okay. There is also a question from Tom Stoss. Where does it state in the bylaws or anywhere that the conference council has the right to sell the Camp Moval property? And then he also has neutral comments.
I'll address the question from Tom. Tom, I stated before in the open forum when we were talking about it that the conference council has the authority given by the former bylaws, now the new bylaws, to act in the absence of conference annual gathering. That's the authority we have as fiduciaries over conference business from day to day. Whenever there is business left on the floor of the conference council that has not been decided, you have the opportunity at that point as a conference council to make decisions based off of that, based off of the actions of the conference council. However, we made a commitment to the entire conference that we would go through a period of discernment, even though the conference council made a recommendation to sell. That was on the floor at that point as our recommendation to the entire conference annual gathering. We did not have a quorum to do that business this past spring. And so it went forward in the discernment process that we would continue to work together to come to a viable agreement about how we go forward. In the absence of that, the recommendation still stands. And so at this point, we are voting to either go with the proposed plan or the recommendation, which is the no vote for the proposed plan of the conference council. That is why it is set up as it is, because we have spent well over, and I can speak to my time on conference and before that, 6 years in this conference council speaking to what are we going to do about Camp Moval. How can we continue to afford Camp Moval and do the other missional-based work that we have agreed we want to accomplish in this conference? If we continue down this route, Camp Moval, Bill Brinkhorst has already stated, is not a viable plan without this vote, because there will be no one present with oversight to do the work of maintenance, site site management, and to put together a program. That is all a part of this plan. So yes, you're correct. That is the reason why that is a part of this plan, and the reason why this recommendation from the previous council statement stands, because we've done the work of discernment, and this discernment says this is the best plan forward, and without it, we all fail. So that's why the no vote says that conference council has the authority to make that decision. Thank you.
Tom Stoss has neutral comments, and then there are multiple for pro comments.
Okay, we will hear the neutral comment.
Tom, your mic has been unmuted. You may speak.
Thank you for the response. I guess a follow-up question, is that an interpretation, or is that something that the conference council lawyer stands by? And why was this information not presented prior? The information being that a no vote would give the conference council the right to sell camp. Why was that first now stated to all these people? Thank you.
I would like to answer, and then I'll give it over to Grant to respond to your legal questions in regards to this. This is not the first time, Tom, that you and I have had this conversation via this format. In the town hall meeting, we had this same question come up, and that was the open forum. In the discernment conversations, we've had this conversation as well. I've been a part of all of those levels. And the council made the decision to make a recommendation that the council would include the sale as a possibility in the no vote. All of those have been a part of this plan from the very beginning. It's not our desire that we do so. It's not our desire that that be the only option, but the option has to remain on the table for the business of the conference to continue, which is the missional ministries that we have left on the table that we have not been able to address while we've been addressing this. So as much as I hear your statement that we have not said this before, I would disagree with you respectfully to say that this has been mentioned repeatedly since February of 2021 when this was first brought forward at that time. Grant. The question is that whether or not...
Hold, give it a second.
Question is whether or not we have legal standing as a conference council to make that decision based off of this decision today.
My understanding is that the issue that's been brought before the body has been presented before, has been based on what the bylaws allow, and is proper given the process that's been gone through to date.
Thank you. I'm going to call for a comment in support, and then we will hear Andrew's motion.
Lindsay Traffis is next in line in support.
Lindsay, your mic has been unmuted. Please unmute yourself and you may speak.
I'm for this vote. I have a lot of friends on here who are struggling just as I am about this after participating a lot in this process. I want to say that I appreciate everyone, but I do hope as you guys reflect on this meeting, as you are all, frustrated as well, starting anew, moving forward, and the inspirational words stated at the beginning of this meeting were really good, to then be issued an ultimatum. And that really was kind of took it all back. So I hope as the council reflects, that's the way it was taken by us. I do think it's a proposal we go forward. I think we need it. I think it sets up things that are addressed that have been needed for years, more than 6 years. The lagoons have been bad since we were kids, guys. It's time to go forward. So we need to get started. And I do agree that OCM money funding shouldn't be what considers Moval, but it's what we have. And it's where we've got to go to keep our camp. And then we get active, and we have a lot of people who've worked really hard over a year and a half and be asking what we can do, and been told by the council to wait. And here, let them get this vote through, and this is our time then. And then we can get active for Moval, and we focus on what we've been trying to focus on for the last year and a half to get our camp going again.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Andrew Mitchell.
One moment.
Thank you. In the light of the council admitting that this proposal is made with incomplete and outdated information, I move to suspend House rules to permit amendments isolated to this piece of business.
That requires a second and then a 2/3 majority vote.
Rick Oberly seconded in the chat.
Katie, can we give Rick Oberly voice?
Yes, one moment.
For the moment.
He only seconded.
Understood, but we need him to say it verbally.
Hold on.
Under Richard.
Richard, your mic has been unmuted. Please second verbally.
I second. Did you hear that?
Yes.
I second. Okay.
So if we're going to call this to vote, I need to create a poll for this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, one
The
moment,
motion
please.
is to suspend the House rules to allow amendments to this plan. This requires a 2/3 majority, and we need to give our tech folks just a minute to make a poll for this. A yes vote suspends the rules and allows amendments. A no vote does not.
Will someone please read the question that is being asked word for word? We move to suspend House rules to allow amendments. So if I were to go here, we move to suspend so then this would be yes, no, abstain? Yes? Okay, so then we've got yes, we've got no, and we've got abstain. That's fine.
But has, even if you're standing? Curious.
Just to clarify, our parliamentarian is letting us know this is a non-debatable motion. There will not be discussion on this motion.
Clarify the question in the chat. The motion being considered right now is whether or not to suspend the rules.
The motion is whether or not to suspend the rules.
No amendment
There is not an amendment being proposed at this moment. Suspension of the rules to allow amendments is the question.
We have 1 minute on the poll, 2 minutes for.
We have 1 minute on the poll, 2 minutes to send in your email. Vote mmsc@eden.edu.
The poll has been opened on Zoom, and the receiving emails is also open now.
Can someone confirm if we're getting the Middleton's, John Middleton's email votes? We are. Great, okay. I said no. Stephanie found the poll.
The poll is closing in 10 seconds.
They need 2/3. And part of the problem is that you also, if you're going to vote yes, you have to commit to staying for the rest of the meeting, and then because then we have to get into amendments. So you can't say yes and leave, because we'll get out of quorum again. Yeah.
We are just tallying up the votes and doing the math right now.
Oh, great. So Jeff Romulus is asking about time, if you want an easy segue. Great.
So friends, just to clarify, I realize that it is 12:06. We are going to announce this vote. Then we will go ahead and move forward with the Moval vote, and then I will entertain a motion to extend the time.
we are almost ready to announce. We are filling in the grid so that we can post it. Thank you for your patience and understanding and flexibility.
Am I? Okay, very good. The votes are in. The request or the motion move to suspend House rules to allow for amendments has failed. It required a 2/3 of the voting body, and that would have been 114 yes votes. It received a total reporting yes, 65 poll, 5 emailed, for a total of 70. No, 87 poll votes, 10 emailed votes for a total of 97. Abstentions, 2 polls, 2 emailed for a total of 4. Again, the noes have it.
Thank you. And we are going to move forward with the vote on the Moval proposal. So that will appear on your screen in just a moment. As a reminder, this requires a simple majority to pass.
Allowing for a minute for poll votes and 2 minutes for emailed.
Please vote now.
And again, that email address is vote, mmsc@eden.edu. Vote, mmsc@eden.edu.
Ten seconds remaining on poll voting. Polls have closed. Email votes are closing in 10 seconds. The polls have closed.
So again, we just need a moment to finalize tallying up the responses. I can see Sonia doing the math. And inputting the information into the grid. Okay, we are ready to announce.
These are the results of the Moval vote. Motion to approve the Camp Moval proposed plan is recommended by the Conference Council. 141 yes votes and polls, 19 email votes for a total of 160. No number of poll votes for no, 14, 0 emailed votes, total of 14. Abstentions 2 and poll votes 0 in the emailed. For a total of 160 yes votes, wins overwhelmingly. Thank you.
Thank you. The moderator calls on Jeff Ramelius.
Jeff, you've been given permission to unmute your mic. You may speak.
I make a motion that we can extend the meeting 15 more minutes so that we can finalize budget and other things.
Thank you. Anyone willing to second? Meredith in the room seconded. So this poll will pop up in your feed in just a second. We are definitely making Sonia put her time in today.
Okay, you have 1 minute for the vote via poll, 2 minutes via email. Again, that email address is vote.mmsc at eden.edu. That is vote.mmsc at eden.edu. One of these days I'll get it right. "20 seconds on the poll, a minute and 20 seconds to receive emails." Time is up on the poll. Still have 1 minute to receive emails. Email voting has closed. We are just tallying up the final numbers and doing the math. And then we will put those numbers onto the grid and post them on the screen. Give us just another few moments to complete that process.
It's a 50%.
Just to clarify, this is a motion that needs a simple majority. I'm sorry, I was incorrect. The standing rules state that we need a 2/3 majority on this item.
Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay, the votes to continue for another 15 minutes. Yes, 133 poll votes, 13 emailed votes, 146 total. No, 5 poll votes, 0 emailed votes, 5 total. Abstentions, 2 poll votes, 0 emailed votes, 2 total. For 146 yes has it. We will extend the meeting for an additional 15 minutes.
Thank you. Now we move to discussion of the 2022 budget. I invite you to indicate in the chat if you wish to make a comment for or against, and we will give permission to turn on your mic. We will, in the Q&A, sorry, not in the chat, in the Q&A.
In the Q&A.
We will alternate comments for those who are for and against until we have exhausted the list. Each speaker has 2 minutes to speak.
Comment on the budget. Can the miscellaneous income of 106,000 line be amended to be identified as the PPP loan income or be added in parentheses?
So that would just be to describe what came in this year that doesn't actually impact our budget for 2022. It's a comment, yeah. Any comments for or against? Looks like there's one.
No comment on the budget? Lauren?
I call on Lauren Cope.
Lauren, your microphone has been unmuted. Please unmute yourself and you may speak.
Great. This is Lauren Cope, lay delegate from St. Paul United Church of Christ in St. Louis and Tower Grove South. I simply want to say that I said this in both of the hearings for Moval and for the budget, take this vote personally. Too often in votes of budgets that I've seen in association and conference and general synod, we think somebody else, someplace else is going to fund this. And it really isn't somebody else, someplace else, it's us. So I said on the floor of synod once, but it didn't come off very well when I said, don't vote for this budget unless you're going to go home and support it. And I think that's the same thing we have to have here. As imperfect as the Moval plan might have been, as imperfect as the budget may be, we're voting on it. We need to support it with our money, with writing a check, with getting our churches to contribute to OCWM, to give that money regularly and to increase it. And I want to stress the personal commitment to these votes to make Moval healthy and to make the Missouri Mid-South Conference healthy And in full disclosure, I also chair the OCWM committee of the conference. So I want to drive that point home. Please take these votes seriously and know that this vote means you have a responsibility to support our conference and our camp. And I yield back.
Thank you. What's that? Seeing no other comments, I think we are ready to vote. That poll will appear on your screen in just a moment, or you are invited to email in your vote.
You have 1 minute to vote via the poll, 2 minutes via email. The email address is votemmmsc@eden.edu. That is votemmmsc@eden.edu.
Sometimes I get it right. Oh, good. Good. I'm so glad that you guys good. Yes, please do eat muffins, croissants, scones, things, coffee, all of this.
10 seconds remaining on the poll. 1 minute and 10 seconds for email.
You gotta give it a few seconds. Just when you turn it on, give it a second.
Our polls have closed. Polls have closed. Okay, we have our vote is in for the approval to, or the motion to receive the budget as recommended by the Finance Committee and presented by the Conference Council. 132 poll votes for yes, 18 emailed votes yes, for a total of 150. 5 poll votes for no, 0 emailed votes for no, for a total of 5. 6 abstentions via poll, 0 email, for a total of 6. The budget passes with 150 votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move to discussion of the Osage head rights motion. I invite you to indicate in the chat if you wish to make a comment for or against.
Q&A.
In the Q&A, sorry. I should have fixed my script. I invite you to indicate in the Q&A if you wish to make a comment for or against. We will alternate comments from those who are for and against until we have exhausted the list. Each speaker has 2 minutes.
A question has been asked, what is the motion, and have we seen this?
Yes, it's on the website and it was presented during the budget. We're going to ask Katie to put that slide back on the screen so you can see it.
Is this it here?
Yes. So the motion is that the income from the Osage Head Rights Fund will be donated to an organization that supports the Osage Nation on an annual basis. Any comments? I call on Rita Hill.
One moment. Yeah.
Sorry, Ronald Hill.
Your mic has been unmuted. Please unmute yourself and you may speak.
Yeah, this is from me, Rita, not Ron. I am for the motion and think we should pass it with no problem because this is our work of justice for those who lived there before us. And it's only the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are multiple questions coming in about.
Turn your mic.
My bad. There are multiple questions coming in about what is the fund and how much is in the fund.
It's going to take me a second to pull up the exact number, but we have approximately $70,000 in that fund right now.
It's 68,000.
68,000, excuse me. We have
That's okay.
approximately 68,000 in that fund at the moment. Again, that fund comes from income that comes in on ownership rights that we have been granted, we have been given a bequest. This came in many years ago, I believe something like 20 years ago. I don't have the exact date. And that money has been accruing in an account. And Conference Council has done the work to research what needs to be done to return those funds to the Osage people. The mechanism for doing so is through the Osage Foundation. And this motion allows us to transfer those funds.
There is a comment from Katie Zimmer, a comment of appreciation for the hard work and research that went into this. I am very much for this. Thank you for supporting this nation tribe.
Thank you.
And there is Stephanie DeLong is for the motion.
I call on Stephanie DeLong.
One moment. Stephanie, you've been given permission to unmute your mic. You may unmute and speak.
Stephanie DeLong, living on land currently owned by the Osage and Missouri people, member of the Oneida Indian Nation of New York. I am for the motion. In my understanding, it is the Conference Council did their due diligence in trying to return the head rights to the Osage. If you want to research that, there were killings and murders involved in gaining those head rights by the people who obtained them. I want to thank everyone for please vote yes so these can be returned to the nation itself, and for the council for doing their due diligence. And thank you. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no more questions or comments, we have reached our time to vote on this. As a reminder, this is a vote on the Osage head rights. It requires a simple majority in order to pass, and you will see the poll on your screen in just a moment.
The poll will be up for 1 minute. Voting is open via email for 2 minutes. Vote MMSC at eden.edu. That is vote MMSC at eden.edu. 20 seconds left on the poll, a minute and 20 seconds remaining to send in your email.
Poll is now.
Yep.
The poll is now closing. I'm sorry about that. Polls are now closing. We have 30 seconds remaining on the emails.
Is that, I can't quite see that far. Is that Candy who asked a yes vote allows council to send the funds directly to the organization? That is a yes. Exciting that we have a quorum and we have the votes that are up to more than the quorum. That's huge. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I say that in my personal too. We have about 15 seconds of spiel. After the cameras are out. Also, I rested in there.
I got a sponsor too.
And then I showed all this.
Somebody probably testing the system.
Right. Only got one.
Praise God.
Thank you to Sonia, Kathy, and Jamie and Meredith for making this behind-the-scenes magic happen. Oh, we made something happen. Really good.
Okay.
We are preparing everything and getting it ready and about to have it up on the screen.
Okay, our votes are in. So the Osage Heads Rights motion to has been, the votes are in. So 132 yes votes by poll, 16 yes votes by email, for a total of 148. One no vote by poll, 0 emailed no votes, for a total of 1. 3 abstentions by poll, 0 emailed abstentions, for a total of 3. This motion passes by 148 yes votes. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, many thanks to all of you for being here this morning. I am so happy for us, and it is a great way to end my time as moderator to actually have a quorum. So I appreciate that. And thank you all for rolling with the new text so well, for participating in important conversations with prayer and enthusiasm. I want to make sure that you know the date of our conference annual gathering for 2022. It will be October 29th, 2022. We have not yet determined if this will be in person, online, or hybrid. but please save the date. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, and I'm told I'm not allowed to make it myself. And then we invite our transitional conference minister to close us in prayer. Rick Oberly has made the motion to adjourn. I call on Rick to state it verbally.
Rick, you may unmute yourself and speak.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
And I open for a second.
Sonia Van, and I move that we close today's meeting as well. I second it, excuse me.
All right, Mary, it's all you.
I would like to echo Andrea's thanks. Again, thanks to everyone who is here this morning in the room at Eden making this magic happen. Thank you to all of you who have called in and spent your morning on Zoom with us or on Facebook with us, watching and participating and voting and asking questions. This is the work of the conference. You are doing the work of the conference, and for that, we are all grateful, and we celebrate that we were able to do this work today because you were here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Will you join your hearts with mine in prayer? Holy One, we have been on a long journey, and yet we know that this journey is a beginning and that we are moving forward, following your call into the future that you are shaping among us and before us. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your presence before us and behind. We ask for you to open our ears that we may hear one another and hear you. Open our hearts that we may love one another and love you. Open our wallets that we can pay for it all. And open us to being more faithful followers and servants of Christ. It is in his name that we do this work, and it is in his name that we strive for justice and for growth and for love. And it is in his name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Meeting adjourned. I'm going to use this as a gavel.